What up, everybody? Scuffy here, and today we're going to do ourselves a little deck highlight. We're talking about the Ogryn Sergeant. The Ogryn Sergeant was just recently, he's one of the newer neutrals added to the game from the Malevolence expansion, and actually, he's actually the only neutral warlord that got added to the game from the Malevolence expansion, unfortunately. We did not get Lord of Flies, nor did we receive a Mechanicum neutral warlord. So the only new warlord that we got out of this expansion was the epic Ogryn Sergeant. For those of you who have picked him up or got him in the event crates, you probably gave him a try, like, hey, he's all right. Or he's not great at all. I don't like him. He works okay in events, blah, blah, blah. Well, I've had fun with them. I've had a lot of fun with them. There are now, officially, we're at the 90 mark. And in 2 weeks' time, or 3 weeks' time, rather, we're going to be at 90 plus warlords just in the game that are collectible, not counting event warlords. I've been on a frontline warlord kick, if you haven't been checking out my latest videos. It didn't happen intentionally, but I was looking at it last night. I realized I have done Shapura from the Custodes. I did Duquesne just recently from the Iron Hands. Before that, I did Ascalon from the Blood Angels. And they all have something similar in common. They all have the ability to gain frontline just a little bit. The Ogryn Sergeant is no exception to this, and I actually like him a lot better because he gets frontline for free. All he has to do is attack. Now there's a caveat there. There's a big difference there. But this allows him to play units that he wants to protect on curve instead of holding off for one turn, holding off for 2 turns, depending on what the ability is, or on the luck of drawing a card. He gets that front line. All he has to do is attack. He also has a nice late game ability in that he can sit back and use that ability to heal and recover. Late game, that's important. It leaves your stuff vulnerable, but ideally you have a board that can withstand some things, or at least can, make your opponent question twice if they really want to attack those to begin with, and then you can heal from there. As you've noticed, I've got 18 games played, 14 victories. One of those losses, actually, it's only 3 official losses. One of those losses, I got a phone call right when the game started, and I had to X out, so I'm not counting that. So I'm actually 17 games played with 14 wins. Feeling pretty good about it. So I'm going to go through some games. We're going to show off some games here, and then we'll go into the deck list, and we'll talk about why, what my approach was, what certain cards were. Doing a lot of Giger and Magnus, gearing up for some card-by-card stuff here coming soon for Space Wolves and Thousand Suns, so get ready for that. Before I get these games loaded here, if you haven't already, or if you're looking into it, if you like what you're seeing here, deck lists, card-by-cards, strategy breakdowns, updates, please hit the subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed. Some analytics. 52% of my views are not from subscribers. So if you're one of those 52% who aren't quite subscribed yet, consider it. We've got some spoilers coming up here for the Angels of Caliban set we're going to be doing. So there's stuff to look forward to here, as well as just the usual content that I put out. Let's go with the Kalidas Assassin here. These are just ones that I pinned. I try to pin the ones that are good games or highlights. This is a good starting hand, good low key energy. All right, I'm comfortable with that. And as I said, the cool thing about the Ogryn Sergeant is he can put out, all he has to do is attack, right? He just has to do that, and if he's got 35 health and he's got a decent amount of healing options within his deck, he should be able to operate just fine. His initiative is medium, so he's not always going to get the counterattack, but when he does, that's nice. In this instance, it was really important because that Latara is probably, it's not the best It's not the best Kalitas form, but it is a very strong form, especially against this deck type that I'm playing. So I want to break her form there as much as possible. And the fact that she had to use her Seek and Destroy instead of putting up a front line, left her vulnerable, I'm okay with where I'm starting out at. And then we're going to go into the old cost reduction Saltarvits, and it becomes a game from there. I'm not too concerned about the Tizca. It's you never know what they're going to get with it. I'm really just concerned about hammering and breaking down that face, breaking down his value, his ability to play cards cheaper, and just ping things away as I can. And as you see here, I mean, he's got a tactic. He's not going to be able to deal with either of those troops. 5 energy, you could play Joker Company and get rid of the Ekratrez. Also, having frontline, and this has been talked about in the other videos I've done, but having frontline cuts down about 90% of the flankers. The fact that Goldstone Hunters was recently changed to be a fast on a rally is big, right? Oh, is that going to go away? There we go. Is big because for the longest time, that was still an obstacle. If you had frontline and you protected a thing, Goldstone Hunters could come out and still get rid of whatever it was. But that's no longer the case. It's conditional. Your opponent has got to play troops in there. Vorax is a flanker that does not have Unstoppable. Most of the flanking troops, don't have Unstoppable. There are several who do. Orphans of War, Ultramarines, Blood Angels all have Unstoppable flanking. Raven Guard potentially could have Unstoppable. It really kind of depends on if you've played the right tactics or not. But their standard flanking troops do not have Unstoppable. So being able to put a Warlord out with frontline right out the gate shuts down the entire strategy that a lot of players have built up and relied on for 3 expansions pretty much, which is flank, flank, flank. If I can't destroy it with the tactic, I can destroy it with a flanking troop, because flanking troops are always good, which is true. There's not a lot of untruth to that statement. However, I think, and recently Everguild themselves kind of mentioned in a in the recent Q&A that they'd like to get the game focused more on back to a troop style play, or a board style play versus the mono warlords and the tactic warlords and such. With that in mind, warlords that can boost their board, such as Lucretia, or Ferris Manus even, or protect their board, such as Latara, the Ogryn Sergeant, any of the Duquesne, Shapura, stand a better chance and actually should theoretically gain more power, stronger options, or at least become more frustrating. And really, as you've seen through this entire game, I don't know what other cards that the opponent had in hand, what they were generating, but they were not generating enough or any options to deal with what was behind my Warlord. That's the idea. That's the strategy there. There's actually several other really good examples here where this just, and these aren't. I mean, these games kind of came up over the course of a few days. Some of them just highlight, like for example, Thaddeus Fail. This is to the extreme. Here is a warlord who can give his entire board flanking, and with the simple attack from my warlord, I am shutting down the effectiveness of that entire strategy. He can flank all he wants, and if he's got something like a time melt-a-bomb or a troop with an ability like Duke Mortimer, and that's a high cost flank, by the way. But if you do that, that's about all that your options are going to do. You're not going to be able to get rid of my troops. That's solid. That's a good place to be. And all I have to do is attack. Now, as I said, there are pros and cons to that, right? The big con with that is you're attacking. And if you're facing a warlord who has 3 attack, like Rom, Angron, that's going to hurt. And at some point, you're going to have to second guess or ask yourself, is that really what you want to do? Do you really want to attack and take that damage to protect that troop, or do you change up your style and do you use his healing ability? You've got to be flexible there. You can't just spam face strikes for the sake of spamming face strikes. You got to be smart about it, folks. And when you're seeing that warlord right from the get-go, that's really when you kind of make decisions as far as what cards you hold in hand, what troops do you put out front. The longer Jubok lives, the better for me. He becomes a target. Again, he's something that my opponent wants to deal with. He wants to deal with the Sagittari squad as well. He wants to deal with all the stuff behind my warlord, and the fact that he can't, or he has to find a way to stun my warlord from attacking, which is an option. That also works out pretty good too. Stunning the warlord, or widespread damage tactics, defensive satellites, frag grenades, direct damage. He's got to use that stuff on my troops as opposed to using it to my warlord. So again, it's drawing heat away from the warlord. Here's defensive tech. That's just a sad roll. I mean, he got the Jubok, but that wasn't hard to do at that point. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to drop that mortar carrier, I believe, and get rolling. Yep. And the pings and the damage are going to be happening. I'm not sure if I attack with this guy or not. I think I leave the last Towel out for a little bit. Yep. I leave him out for a little bit just to draw ire and heat. Still an even man's game, but the entire time he's creating troops, that's all he's doing is creating troops. He's not flanking. That's not an option for him. He can put down bodies all he wants. Normally, in this turn alone, he would be able to put down both of those guys, get rid of my Sagittari, and get rid of the last Towel. In this game, he is not able to do that at all. And all I have to do is just attack. And there's a game here. I'll share the next game. I'll make it a little bit quicker. I'll share the next game because I think the next game I had to do some rotations and heal. He saw that he wasn't going to be able to do anything without flanking, and that was kind of the end of the game there. Corvax Utter Blight. Sevatar Decima. Ooh, Decima's a good one because he was stunning my warlord. Gosh. I think we're going to go for the Corvax Utter Blight. We're going to show that one off. I think that's the game. I think that's the game. That's a good starting hand. I like that starting hand. Anytime you get Jubok to start. Now, here's a warlord here who not just because of the Ruinstorm cards, Corvax's ability is a board killer. That's brutal, you know. The fact that he can poison the stuff that I'm protecting completely bypasses all of that. And I do believe I might have one card in the deck to deal with that. That's something to look into. I'm not really sure if I do or don't. But all he has to do is pay 2 energy, get rid of my Jubok, pay 2 energy to get rid of my Secretary Axiarch. Every turn he can pay energy. And he chose not to do that this round. I'm not sure why. I don't know if he was just going to try to whittle down my health. If that was a misplay. But the fact that he didn't really lets me capitalize. And I'm going all in as much as I possibly can. Cut those toads down so he can't buff them. And meanwhile, gain some cards. And I like the fact, normally, I don't know if this is most of you guys, but normally when I play Jubok down against Ruinstorm, I end up just copying their tactics that like their mutations, which do me no good because I don't have any demons in my deck. But this game around, I actually managed to get a couple demons, so I'm good with that. And so far, we are evenly matched. Getting some solid demons down here. I think this might be more of a game that highlights when Jubok survives, or if you have like a Kaiser Lane that can survive, just the benefits and the rewards that you're going to get from there. But we are seeing a warlord here, who now he's put out a front line. This is a beefy front line that I've got to decide to attack or not, and I go for it. I go for the beating, take some hurt on my Secretaries, just to keep that pressure going. Otherwise, if I didn't have those options, I would have to decide, do I take the 4 attack on my warlord to give frontline? I'd still have to give up somebody, and it just didn't work out that way, so I ended up not going that route. And we're starting to see a few more of the cards that I've got in my deck you're starting to see come up here. And when this game was over, I'll go through the deck list. I don't know if this is a game that I healed exactly. That might be just some other game. There's been several, though, where late game really it comes down to 1 turn, 2 turns of giving up my frontline options and healing. And this turn here, instead of poisoning that troop, which I was really surprised he didn't do, again, he passed on it. So I'm going to capitalize on that, and I'm going to drop some stuff down, drop that that body down, put down a second body, because if I leave him out as a first, he could just poison him again. I got to put down at least a second troop there to throw off his random Corvax's random potential. But we're still evenly matched. We're still really kind of trading tit for tat, right? And I don't know, he just kind of gave up. I don't know if he realized too late about his ability, if he forgot about that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he had in hand. Maybe he didn't have any more options to deal with it. Not a great match to show for the healing aspect, but I'm going to talk about it in my deck list here. We'll kind of go over this here. Now, you'll notice as a neutral card, as a neutral warlord, and there's no Legion cards in here, but all of the cards I've got play a role. And this is not a perfect list by any means. This is still a work in progress. For the most part, this is the deck list I've run for all but one of my games. I think my first game, I kind of tweaked it a little bit, made it a little bit more Mechanicum focused with Laz Towel in there. But I think there's probably 3 or 4 cards I'd feel comfortable changing out, maybe even 4 or 5, depending. All of these are good, though. All of these are really good cards for what they do and how they work with the warlord. As always, anytime you can protect a troop with Farron's Militia and force your opponent to play a tactic, Farron's Militia is going to be good. Kai's Lane, again, those are good starting cards. I don't think I need to say much about a lot of these cards. They have the value that they offer. They offer buffs to infantry. Jubok has just got long-standing value. But the cards that I do want to mention here, why I've got them, is obviously Sagittarius Squad, Helios Mortar, get those go without exception. I've got Alpha Theta in here because for the same reason that the generators that generate damage, the Sagittarius and the Mortar Squad, these guys, if they survive, and because I can protect them from flankers, they're going to require typically 2 attacks to get rid of. 2 tactics, a warlord activation and tactic normally. I mean, they might get a high roll defensive satellites, that's possible, but they boost with Laz Towel, and if they stick around, they generate tactics for me. So they're generating those tactics, and they're a 4 cost as opposed to a 5 cost. 5 cost I could put in Pyramid of Photep. That is an option. It's immune to Melgator. It's got that ward. I could get any sort of tactics. That's something I might consider throwing in somewhere down the road. But with it being a 5 cost, I like to keep him at 4. I like to get more bodies on the board, and especially because Laz Towel is not a structure, he can attack if I absolutely need to. I've got as much healing as I can fit in here, barring like 2 or 3 more cards. I've got 2 Pi Alphas, not just for the healing, but also for that stun removal. That's very important, either for my troops or for my warlord, just being able to continue to protect my stuff. I also have got, as you saw, I've got the Ekratrez, and I've got the Chimu. I've got 1 of these. I could put 2 of these in here. It's a Mechanicum troop. It bolsters with Laz Towel. It heals 2, and it removes poison. It's kind of seeing a lot of play with Corvax out there. There's also, with all the Mechanicum troops in here, I could very easily choose to go a cheaper route and go with the life support. Life support. This is an option too, just to remove poison from a friendly unit. And if it's a Mechanicum troop, it can get Survivor 1. It doesn't give me anything as far as a troop on the board, but because it's a lower cost card, it's an option. But I haven't, a couple Corvaxes. I haven't run into Mortarion necessarily, and I'd rather have a body to protect for a turn or two than play a tactic, and that's all I'm getting out of it. I'm not getting any sort of awesome effects. Now, what else I'm getting here, and this is important to note, all of these cards, for the most part, I think there might be like one or two exceptions. I've got Artillery Strike in here as my tactic, as well as a Seek and Destroy. And my other tactic is, where is it? The Angelic Presence. You saw that earlier. This is more healing. I debated on two of these, but I think as a one of, this is nice. It buffs the health of my troops that I'm going to be having. It does two things for me. Late game, it could heal 3 to my Warlord. Or early game, if I want to go that route. I'd rather hold this onto this for late game, because making your 1 health troops, 2 health, even just to get out of range of defensive satellites, or a 5 health last Taul, that's nice. That's nice. That's just the way it is. But most of my troops here, most of the cards, do two things. First off, they draw heat away from my Warlord, and that is a strategy I talk about all the time. Your opponent has got to respond to these troops, right? They cannot let these troops sit on the board, because they're going to consistently generate value for you. Every single one of these troops is just going to be doing something. Your opponent has got to get rid of them before they can deal with you. Any damage that you take is secondary to that, typically. Secondary, all of these troops here have a rally or end of turn effect. And that is important, because as a neutral Warlord, I want to be able to impact the board as quickly as possible. While I have a frontline ability, and it's nice to be able to protect, these guys just have got just a constant that can bolster anybody on the board. While I want to be able to protect any sort of troop activations, Duke Mortimer, troops that deal damage, that takes time and setup. Also, it limits me from playing more troops on curve and protecting them. That's important with the Ogryn Sergeant, because he can use his ability, gain frontline for free, and then play a troop at the same time. That's major. If I have to spend 2 energy to use a troop ability and then attack, well, then technically at 5 energy, I'm only able to play 3 energy troops. It can have positive impact there, but I want to have immediate impact, and I want to have boards. I want to have bodies on the board. I want to have cards that generate immediate value, value when they hit the board, or value when, oh, there it is, value at the end of my turn, or when they rally. And then in addition to that, once they're on the board, obviously, then they become a threat in themselves, right? Lernia Hydra is, boom, anti-tactics, but also it's this giant 9/8. And because I can attack with my Warlord, it's a 9/8 that my opponent has got to blow a high-cost tactic on, multiple high-cost tactics if they can afford it, or an unstoppable flanker or something like that. Now, the downside of the Warlord's ability, and this is important to note, is as the game goes on and the game gets higher, especially against certain factions, as you saw with Korbaks, who could drop out very, very beefy frontline units, it becomes then, okay, do I attack and take that 5 or 6 damage from that frontline troop to protect my 1 Lernia Hydra, or do I sit back and heal? And that's kind of the game that you have to play, and you have to be very aware as far as what it is that you're opting to protect, and what it is that you where your health is at. What is the lethal range? It's a much more stronger dance, as it were. And it's not a perfect list. These are all Warlords here, especially like Malkarian and Sevatar, where you saw that they just shut down. They rely on Talon, the flanker. Unstoppable troops is great if they can get them off, but then you still have got troops that they've got to deal with. Caleb Decima, stunning. It stands. He's actually got a lot. He's got a lot to it. I think there was a Kabanda in here somewhere. I don't know if I won that one or not. I faced Kabanda a couple times, so I had to have at least beat Kabanda one time. I don't know if I beat him twice. But those are the good games. There's a couple games in there that looked like they were challenge games, or just, I don't know what they quick resigns. So there's no point in showing those. As I said, this deck list isn't perfect. I think you can make this however you want to make it. I think if you're looking to include certain cards in the deck list, it's worth trying to make the most of that strategy. I'm going to protect this troop on curve. Is it worth it? Is it worth putting out, a 3/3 demoralized militia on turn? What is it doing for you? It's giving your opponent deck. Yeah, you get a 3/3 body, but that's all it's doing. Is it worth putting out a Neaser Scout? You're not buffing it. I mean, you could build your deck to buff it, sure, but that's about all you're getting. Is it worth it to put out some more front lines into the deck? I think that's an argument that you could make. I think late game, having a few Ogryns or having an Ornitov's Barge is worthwhile. Duke Mortimer is definitely a good card to have to protect, absolutely. But again, as I said, you got to use his energy ability. If you're not, you just have a 4/7 you paid 5 energy for, you've gained nothing from it whatsoever. Your opponent can destroy it, they can bounce it to your hand. You're not gaining any value there. It's a big counter if you do. You could throw an Edict of Censure. I'd argue against the Hunans. Maybe Firewalkers is a worthwhile inclusion just to give your warlords some teeth, and then you're protecting this beefy 5 attack as well. And potentially Mount Pharos, Merit's Mercenaries. I would argue against Arcology, only for the simple fact that while this generates populaces for you, and you could put down a Secretary on there and buff up the attack of each of those troops, this itself is not going to, I mean, it's just generating low-cost troops for you. That's all it's doing. Is that worth protecting more than a command post, for example, for just one turn? You protect that command post for one turn, that could be all it takes. Or would you rather have some demons worthwhile, protecting a Beast of Fyra from any sort of flanking attack? That's pretty nice. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you, but you really want to look at what it is that you're protecting. Again, Pyramid of Photep, I think, is a card that's worthy of inclusion. I think Teloth, Sofpek, they're strong demons. They really are, but the maintenance cost is going to limit your options. So you really have to build, I guess, with that in mind. You don't need Drilling Sight with this deck. You don't need to have as many tactics if you have troops that are generating effects for you consistently and reliably. You could argue to have a shield generator in there. You could argue to have some more cards that do damage when they hit the board, or just have a couple of key front lines. Make it your own. Find a way to make it work. I think Yuri the Seducer is a situational card. It did serve me well in one game, but only one game. So maybe I'll take it out. It's a high cost card, but making my opponent's 4 attack warlord drop to 0, and they can't flank it. They've got to play a tactic to get rid of it. And if they don't, I've got this nasty 7/9 that I can do with what I want. That's nice. That has its merits. Is it worthwhile or not? It could be a second Doombringer. It could be. I could very well easily put a supply lines in here just to get out my Helios or Doombringer faster. Although that's really limited. I guess I could bring out a cheaper Hydra too. I mean, it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be. It's a build. Take a look at it. See what you have in your collection. See what you want to protect. But kind of keep in mind. But kind of keep in mind that value. Keep in mind that idea. Protecting on curve is huge. And if your opponent doesn't get lucky with the defensive satellites, or they don't have a lot of tactics that they can deal with stuff that's protected, they're going to take some hurt. If they can stun you consistently, you can still get around it because you still have a lot of troops, and eventually they're going to have to break away from stunning your warlord to stun your troops. And even if they stun your troops are doing damage on rally and at end of turn, so they're still effective. So that's it for me, guys. That is my deck list. I hope that was worth something. Makes you kind of think about. There's 90 warlords in here. I've been having fun. I think this is I think this might be the last frontline warlord I do for a little bit here, but I was on a strong kick, had a good time, wanted to share this list with everybody out there, and hopefully it gives you some ideas. So I've got the Space Wolf card by card, Thousand Suns card by card coming up, hopefully this week or next. We've got the Dark Angels, Angels of Caliban spoilers are coming up, so a lot to look forward to. Hope this finds you well. Hope you're having fun. Hope it inspires you to try some new things out, or to give the Ogryn Sergeant a second run, because yeah, he's pretty straightforward. He doesn't do a whole lot, but what he does fairly well for the troops that he has. And I think there's a shift happening with the warlords and trains, and I think there's merits to having warlords who can protect and buff. We're seeing Lucretia in the top high Terra lately. There's no reason why there's other warlords who cannot, who might want to join those ranks. So that's for me, guys. Until next time, keep playing Legions, and we will talk to you later. Bye.